Hi, Caleb with Brownells here. Today I am joined by the Hank Strange. Hank.
Caleb, thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for coming out. It is a pleasure to have you here in the Brownells studio.
Absolutely. This is high up on my bucket list, so I'm honored to be here.
Excellent. Well, we're glad you're here. And today we're going to be talking about some stuff centered around self-defense handguns. And really what we're going to be talking about is, what's good enough for you? And kind of jumping right into it, we've been doing this for quite some time. So with that being said, what's good enough for you?
Right. So for me, I think when it comes to self-defense and what I'm carrying on me, start with the mission, obviously, right?
Sure.
If it's going to be for self-defense, you have to have it on you. And you want to start with what's the right size for how you're going to dress? Can you actually cover it up and feel comfortable? Therefore, You're carrying it with you all the time, because if you don't feel comfortable, doesn't go out of the house with you, right?
Exactly.
After that, I would think of what fits in my hand, what kind of ammo capacity do I need to defend myself. We can always get into that. I'm sure people have different feelings about this. I want as much as I can possibly squeeze and then still be able to conceal it on myself.
Yep.
And then obviously you want that firearm to be reliable, trustworthy, so you want to make sure that when you need it, it's going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%, and we've talked about this a little bit kind of offset, and, picking a handgun, and I've said this a million times, is like picking a set of shoes.
Yes.
And, you got to make sure it fits you. Mm-hmm. And that's why there's so many different brands and styles of handguns out there within certain categories, is because not every single one is the best for every person in every situation. And that's a huge factor of it. And, for me personally, when it comes down to it, reliability is really the number one. I would rather take a little bit of a hit in ammo capacity for a plus in reliability. And
I agree with you.
It's balancing all these things out, and you have so many different opinions in certain areas. But for me, that's one thing I do not compromise on.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And you can also have an extra magazine on you.
Sure.
I think when a lot of people are looking at this, and I get these questions all the time, kind of reliability and price is coming in close. Mm-hmm. I think especially for someone who's new, they're trying to go for the lower price. And then as you get into this, you start to realize you get what you pay for.
Yep.
So that's probably a question that we want to have as well, and balance that out with people. What's right for your budget?
Yeah.
What can you actually afford?
Exactly. So we're going to be hitting kind of a few different categories here, but while we're on the topic here, let's talk about budget. What's kind of one of the I guess this is kind of going to be more of our opinion area here,
yes.
But
Yeah.
What's one of the minimum budget areas you can kind of hit?
So if I'm thinking about it right now, at this time, I would say about $350, $400, that's your floor.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
And I think there's there's a high selection that you could go for in that category when it comes to self-defense. Lots of different brands. Nowadays, because of the competition and technology, I think we're just getting a lot more for our money these days.
I would agree, absolutely.
Yeah. And also, I would just add to that if you can't afford, let's say what you're looking for brand new is in that $350, $400 range, and that's too much for you, you can always get it used. There's nothing wrong with that. There's
nothing wrong at all with getting a used gun, especially if you're buying it from a reputable dealer. Like, for example, when I was gunsmithing at a retail store in South Louisiana, we had a pretty big gunsmith department, and the retail store was huge. Mm-hmm. And we sold a lot of used firearms. Now, a lot of manufacturers don't cover used firearms under warranty. Some do, some don't. Mm-hmm. But our gunsmith department actually backed those used firearms. Right. So even though the manufacturer didn't cover it, we as a store you still had a warranty from us. So buy from a reputable dealer, and there's absolutely nothing at all wrong with buying a used firearm.
Yeah, and folks think that guns work, like shoes or clothing, that you need to get it brand new. And what I would say is typically folks out there buy a handgun, let's say, and they try it out, and then it doesn't work for them. Mm-hmm. Then it goes on the used market. So there's not a lot of rounds that went through that.
Yep.
And even if those companies don't cover it for the second person that bought it, they can still fix that gun and take care of it for you if the gunsmith, if a local gunsmith can't do it, the companies can do it, and it's not super expensive either. So
right, yeah.
don't worry about that.
Yep, it's usually really affordable, and there's nothing wrong with a little bit of holster wear. You're going to get holster wear on it anyway, so that's absolutely nothing to shy away from. So used guns are definitely a go. So you can get a better gun that's a little bit above your price range per se in the new area just by buying it used and end up with a better gun in the long run. So that's definitely a really good way to go. So kind of jumping into another category of it, you know, and you hear this at the gun counter. Anytime you go into a gun store, you know, there's a guy at the counter, there's another guy standing next to him that's kind of, even though he's a customer, he's trying to sell the gun because, you know, he's a fanboy of one thing, so he's trying to push that onto the guy, whether he be experienced or new, and the just as good argument kind of comes up.
Exactly.
Like, my gun's just as good as that one, so you should be, you know, getting that or over what you're looking at, and
I've seen it many times. People have done it to me.
yeah, and it's bad gun store etiquette, I would say.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. It's rude. Try not to be that guy. Don't be.
Unless someone asks you first what your opinion is.
Okay, yeah. If someone asks your opinion, by all means. If not, you know, don't. I said try not to be that guy. Don't be that guy.
Have you ever been that guy?
I was never that guy.
Never?
I was never that guy.
Okay. If someone has evidence.
Hold on. Wait a minute. Have you ever been that guy?
No, I try not to be that guy either, because a lot of that happened to me when I first started doing this, and I know how it feels. I always start, if someone asks me for my opinion, I ask them, what do they want it for?
Sure.
You know, what are they looking for? What are things that are important to them? Do they need a safety? Do they not need a safety? I personally, you know, I'll rather have a trigger safety or something like that than to have a manual safety on there that I have. It just depends on how you're going to train. Mm-hmm. Some people prefer to have that, and therefore they train for it. So you know, if you're talking to someone and they want your advice, you really need to find out who they are, what they're looking for. I think if you're first getting into this, you maybe just feel more comfortable doing it that way.
Right.
So I really just try to find out who that person is.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, if you have the opportunity to fire that handgun and try it out, definitely do that. See how that gun actually handles in your hand with your shooting style. Because different guns are going to shoot different in your hand. Because, like we said before, everyone's different.
Yeah, and that is a good idea. And I think if you look for stores that are connected to ranges, typically they'll rent those guns to you, and you can go out there and you get to try them out.
And and that is by far the best option when shopping for a new handgun, especially if you're new to firearms or new to self-defense handguns in general. That's going to be the best way to get one. Yeah.
Also, I would say what works for me as a guy might not necessarily work for my wife. Mm-hmm. You know, and if I make her carry or buy what I would buy and carry myself, but she doesn't carry it because she doesn't feel comfortable, doesn't fit into how, you know, how she wants to conceal it, then we've just wasted money.
Yeah, but Hank, J-frame revolvers are the best handguns for women. Everyone knows that.
That's what some stores say. Lola and I have been there, and what I found out is once Lola actually, because we've actually bought a J-frame like that, and then when she goes to shoot it, it doesn't feel so great in the hands. Yeah, therefore she doesn't practice, and she also doesn't carry it. I think it's a great backup, though, by the way. Great backup gun. Yeah, I wouldn't, you know, knock it at all for that reason. I know a lot of guys that carry them as a backup.
Sure, absolutely. But yeah, and that's just another one of those gun counter things you'll hear as well. You know, J-frame revolver is the only gun for a woman, and that's another one of those myths.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you try it out yourself. So I would say to the ladies out there who are watching this, try it out for yourself. You're not the same as your husband.
Yep.
I don't think he's going to wear the same shoes as you, you know, in most cases. So definitely try it out yourself.
Yeah, and so my wife actually went handgun shopping without me. She went and
probably the best way to do it.
She was like, you know what, I'm doing this and I'm doing it without you. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So she went out, she bought her handgun, she got the one that fit her, and
Best thing to do. I leave Lola alone when she's doing those kind of things.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, you do you. You got this. And she did it right. She made a good choice. So.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm coming from a little bit of a different position here because I'm like a huge advocate for quality. Because I carry, my typical carry gun is a SIG 226 Legion series, right?
Oh, you're a SIG guy, huh? Says
a
lot.
Hey, whoa, time out. But at the same time, I'm not like a fanboy or a gun snob. Like, I'll carry that SIG 226 Legion series. I might carry, depending on the scenario, I might carry my high power. I might be carrying a Glock 43.
Right.
I might be carrying my wife's Springfield Hellcat, and because I'm not like the gun snob. You know what I mean? So all of those are good enough for me depending on the situation.
Right.
And especially during the winter, like if I'm wearing a winter coat, I'll carry my high power maybe in a shoulder rig, depending on how cold it is outside, what kind of clothing I'm wearing. If it's in the fall, I'll probably be carrying my SIG 226. If it's really hot during the summer, I'll be carrying my Glock 43. So it all depends on the situation and different things like that. So I have a variety of guns that are good enough for me, I'll say.
Okay. I would say I'm a little bit different from that because I live in Florida mostly and the weather is pretty much the same.
Yep.
Hot, with hot and then humidity.
Sure.
And then more hot. So typically, for a long time, I carried a Glock 43 all the time.
Right.
And I thought that was pretty good for me, or good enough for me. Recently, I've switched over to a Walther PPS.
Okay.
But it took me a really long time. I think I took about 6 to 9 months of actually owning that gun before I switched over. And I don't know if folks look at that as like, okay, it's a step up. I was just looking for something different, I think. But there was nothing, in my opinion, wrong with the 43. I just wanted something different. And I think those two guns are pretty much very close to each other. Maybe, to me, the Walther has better ergonomics.
Sure.
And a few features, few upgrades on the sights and things like that. And I know people can do that. Let's say with a Glock, you can upgrade it. I tend to not do that. I carry that gun as it came out of the box.
So that's a really, really good point. So me, as a gunsmith, I've been gunsmithing for a while. I still prefer to carry my guns as they came out of the box for a lot of reasons. And the main reasons being legal reasons. Anything you do to that gun can be used against you in court if you use it in court. And a lot of things we're not going to get into here. But and that's one of the reasons I kind of went with the 226 Legion series.
Okay.
Because it has a lot of upgrades I would kind of do to a 226.
Okay.
But it comes from the factory that way. So that was kind of my, like factory upgraded gun.
Yeah.
But that's not to say I wouldn't necessarily say I view that as an upgrade when I'm carrying over, let's say, my Glock 43, because I view it in more of a situational carry aspect, if that makes sense.
I think it makes sense. I think the reason that I did that, or the reason why I carry as it comes out of the box, I want it to be very normal when I go to use it.
Right.
So if I'm competing or I'm building a fun gun or something like that, I may want the trigger to be better. But I think in a situation where I'm going to be under pressure and not thinking as much as reacting, obviously I'm thinking about things. I want that to be very normal and be very slow for me to do it. It's going to look fast.
Right.
But in my brain, that thing needs to feel normal. And I put a lot of rounds through something before I start carrying it. And I know that's probably something that folks out there would think about. Probably, to me, at least 1,000 rounds has to go through that before I carry it. And I want it to be very normal, if that makes sense.
That makes
very
perfect
repeatable,
sense.
my
Yep.
experience with it.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. I would agree with that 100%.
So here's a question for you, Caleb, Mr. SIG guy.
Shoot.
No pun intended?
No pun was intended.
Okay. Is a high point good enough for you?
So that's a loaded question. I'm full of these.
Okay.
Yes and no. No, it's not, because I would, let's say finance was the issue. I would rather just wait a little bit longer and get something just a little bit better. But if that was not an option, then it's better to have something than to have nothing.
I agree with you. And that's what I tell folks out there. If what you can afford is a high point, I believe a high point works well enough. I've never had problems function-wise with a high point until you mess with it. Then you may have some issues, but it works. So I just think there's ergonomics and things like that with it. So I would advise folks to either buy something used, or like you said, wait, maybe put something on layaway.
Right.
But ultimately, if your life is in danger and a high point is what you can afford, then I would go for that.
Yep,
Protect
it's
yourself.
better to have something.
Absolutely. So Caleb, I'm sure you like history. If you go back in history to, let's say, the founding of America, did everyone have a high-end gun, or did they have what they could afford? Were they all walking around with your Colts?
No, so real life wasn't like every Western movie we've ever seen growing up.
It ain't so.
Yeah, no, not everyone had the iconic, Colt single action that cost, 2-month wages. There were a lot of, the cheap, no name, not so good guns. People had what they can afford to protect them and their families because, they're on the frontier. It's you had
That's
to have
how it
something.
works. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got a priority list.
Yep, and protecting your family, your homestead was very high up on that priority list. So you had to have something. So Hank, thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me. It's
You
been
were
fun.
Always welcome here at the Brownells studio.
Thank you.
So for all of you out there, let us know in the comments below what's good enough for you and also what isn't good enough for you. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.